You've been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, haven't you? Silently, secretly. You've tried to hold everything together. You wake up with thoughts already racing, and before the sun has even risen, your heart is tired. There's this pressure inside of you to fix it, to figure it out, to make sure nothing falls apart. And no one sees the silent tears. No one sees how you've become an expert at hiding the trembling of your soul. You smiled, but behind that smile is a storm of what-ifs. You worry about your family, your future, your finances, your past mistakes, your missed chances. You lie awake rehearsing conversations, decisions, scenarios that haven't even happened, and maybe never will. And in that quiet place, your heart whispers, "What if I'm not enough?" That's the fear that drives so much of this constant control. The fear that if you don't do it all, it will all fall apart. But there is one who is whispering even louder. Not with noise, but with stillness. His voice doesn't push, it draws. And he's been calling you, yes, you, to let go. To open your white, knuckled grip on the things you were never meant to carry. There's a tenderness in his invitation. Let me be your strength. Let me handle what you can't. Let me show you what peace feels like when it's not something you create, but something you receive. You've been trying so hard to be strong, haven't you? But there is a different kind of strength, the kind that's born in surrender. You were never created to figure it all out. You were never created to walk through this life by your own understanding, that ache in your chest. It's not failure. It's a holy longing, a cry to trust again, to believe again. To let go of the illusion that you have to know everything to be safe. You don't. What if rest isn't found in the answers, but in the presence of the one who holds the answers? What if freedom begins the moment you stop trying to control what only he can carry? He sees your fear. He knows your fragile places. And he's not asking you to pretend they don't exist. He's asking you to bring them to him. He's asking you to let go, not because he wants less for you, but because he longs to give you more peace, more joy, more clarity, more of him. That's where the worry fades, not because the world changes, but because something in you does. So breathe, beloved. Just breathe. The one who formed you hasn't forgotten you. And he's whispering right now, let go. Trust me. I've got this. ChatGPT said you wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, your mind is already tangled in thoughts. What needs to be done? What could go wrong? What if you forget something important today? What if the thing you're fearing actually happens? And there, in the quiet of morning, the heaviness creeps in. It's subtle, yet overwhelming. And for so long you've believed that if you just worked a little harder, prayed a little more perfectly, kept everything organized, you could avoid the pain. You could prevent the storm. But worry doesn't warn you before it moves in. It simply takes a seat in the corner of your heart and starts whispering false responsibility. That somehow you're holding the whole world together. That if you just think hard enough, plan well enough, anticipate every angle, you can save it all from falling apart. You've been trying to be God in your own life without realizing it. Trying to carry burdens too heavy, trying to fix hearts you didn't create, trying to hold futures that were never placed in your hands. Worry is not just a feeling. It's a signal, revealing where trust has been replaced by fear. And fear loves control. Fear says, if I can just control this, I'll be safe. But that safety never comes. That peace never settles in, because control is a counterfeit comfort. It promises what only God can provide. The more you try to control, the more anxious you feel. And the more anxious you feel, the more tightly you try to grip everything around you. He didn't design you for that weight. That's why you're weary. That's why your chest feels heavy. That's why you feel like no matter how much you do, it's never enough. Because worry is the fruit, the evidence of a soul that's forgotten who the true burden bearer is. It's not your job to hold everything. It's not your role to anticipate every outcome, avoid every mistake, or prevent every hurt. You were never created for that kind of responsibility. Your soul was crafted to rest, to live under the shadow of the Almighty, to lean on arms stronger than your own, to follow, yet not strive. And in those moments when worry begins to build again, it's not because you're weak. It's because you've lost sight of his strength. That's the gentle rebuke and the beautiful invitation to return, to come back under the covering of trust. Trust that says, I don't have to know how this ends. I just need to know who's with me. Trust that breathes even when the outcome is unclear. Trust that releases the need to manage everyone else's reactions, everyone else's choices, every future fear that might never come to pass. You see, worry is exhausting because it creates a world where God is not near. But the truth is, he is as close as your breath, closer than your next heartbeat. He's not pacing the floors of heaven unsure of your future. He's seated, calm, in control, sovereign over all. And when you align yourself with that reality, something shifts. You stop scrambling. You stop overthinking. You stop worshiping the problem and start gazing again on the one who holds the solution. There's a whisper from heaven that calls to the deepest part of your soul. The part that's tired of pretending, tired of managing, tired of being afraid. It's the voice of the shepherd saying, come unto me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That's not a poetic phrase. It's a promise. He will give. He will take the weight. He will carry what you can't. But you must hand it to him. And that handing over, that surrender, begins in the unseen place, in your thoughts, in the silence, in the sacred moment where you stop and whisper, Lord, I can't do this without you. Pray with me now. Not from your lips, but from your soul, Lord Jesus. I lay before you all that I've tried to carry in my own strength. My fears, my need to control, my silent anxieties that wrap around my heart. I surrender the outcomes I cannot predict. I yield the burdens I was never created to bear. Forgive me for trusting in my own understanding more than your promises, yet teach me again to trust in your faithfulness. Anchor my heart in your peace. Yet, remind me that your grace is sufficient and your power is made perfect in my weakness. I receive your rest today, not as something I earn, but as a gift I choose to receive. This prayer is not a closing. It's a beginning, because worry doesn't leave in an instant. It fades as trust grows. And trust grows every time you take your hands off what he never asked you to hold. When you pause long enough to hear his voice over the noise of your thoughts, When you stop rehearsing your fears and start declaring his truth. This is the life he invites you into, not one free from trouble, but one filled with peace even in the middle of it. A peace that isn't rooted in circumstances, but in confidence that he is who he says he is. Faithful. Present. In control. Not just of the universe, but of your life, your details, your tomorrow. And when you choose to believe that, worry loses its grip. Not because the storm is gone, but because you are no longer facing it alone. You've always been told that strength looks like holding it all together. That being mature means having the answers, making sense of the chaos, and pushing through the silence as if nothing shakes you. And so you've done that, day after day, year after year, building up walls of understanding, trying to make life predictable, controllable, manageable. But deep inside, there's a trembling part of you that knows how fragile it all really is. That no matter how much you plan, things still fall apart. That no matter how well you try to understand, there are questions that never get answers. The pain that came without explanation. The door that closed without warning. The person who left without reason. And in all of it, you search for meaning, for clarity, for logic, hoping that if you just understood, it wouldn't hurt as much. But true surrender doesn't wait for clarity. It doesn't hold out for God to explain himself. It doesn't demand to see the blueprint before stepping forward. Real surrender happens in the dark. It happens when everything in you wants answers, but your spirit says, even if I never understand, I will still trust. That kind of surrender breaks something open in you, not weakness, but reverence, a holy letting go. You stop asking, why? And you start whispering, yes. You lay down your pride, your logic, your timelines, and you lift up empty hands. There's a sacred beauty in those who don't have it all figured out, but choose to trust anyway. In those who walk by faith and not by sight, not because they feel strong, but because they've seen his faithfulness in their weakness. Surrender is not giving up. It's giving over. Giving over your will, your agenda, your need to be certain. Because certainty was never meant to be your God. That role belongs only to the one who knows the end from the beginning. You may think you're waiting for answers, but what if heaven is waiting on your surrender? What if the next step isn't about understanding more, but about trusting deeper? He never promised full understanding. He promised peace that passes understanding. And there's a reason for that. Because his ways are higher. His thoughts are not like ours. We look for straight lines, yet clean conclusions and tidy explanations. But he moves through mystery. He uses brokenness to birth beauty, silence to speak truth, and delay to develop deep roots in your soul. And every time you let go of the need to control or comprehend, you open the door wider for his spirit to move. Surrender isn't something you do once. It's a posture of the heart. It's what you choose every morning when fear knocks, every afternoon when doubt creeps in, every night when the silence feels loud and the darkness feels heavy. It's in those moments that surrender becomes worship. Not a song, not a feeling, but a decision. To place your hope not in what you see, but in who you know. And there's a kind of power that is born in that place. Not a power that impresses others, but one that anchors you when everything else is shifting. So many of us want God to act while we hold on. But He's waiting for us to release. Because you can't carry His promises and your own plans at the same time. You must choose. You must decide whose hands are more capable, yours or His, whose timing is more perfect, yours or His, whose understanding is more complete, yours or His. And when you finally choose His way, something changes. You don't lose your identity, you find it. You don't lose your strength, it multiplies. Because where you end is where He begins. Pray now from the deepest part of your soul, Lord, I lay down my questions. I surrender my need to understand everything. I have tried to hold on to what only you can carry, and I am weary. I have demanded clarity when you were offering peace. Forgive me, Lord. I release my grip on the things I cannot fix, the answers I cannot find, the pain I cannot explain. I trust that your silence is not absence, that your delay is not denial. Teach me to rest in your timing, to find joy in trusting without knowing. Help me to live not by what I see, but by faith in your promises. Anchor me, O God, in the stillness of your Spirit. This surrender isn't a destination. It's a daily offering. Because even when you surrender today, yet fear will try to return tomorrow. Doubt will try to take its place again. But you will remember not what you feel, but who you belong to. You'll remember the faithfulness that carried you before and the grace that will carry you again. You'll remember that understanding is a gift, but it is not the foundation. The foundation is trust. The foundation is the one who never fails, who never forgets, who never walks away. And when you live from that place, you don't need all the answers. You just need Him. There are seasons when everything feels uncertain, when nothing around you seems stable, when the ground beneath your feet feels like shifting sand. And it's in those very moments that trust is tested, stretched, and refined. We all long for clarity, don't we? To know exactly what's coming next. To see how things will turn out before we take the first step. But trust doesn't grow in clarity. It grows in the unknown. Trust is not a fruit of understanding. It is the evidence of surrender. It is what anchors your soul when every visible sign points to chaos. It is the choice to believe when you have every excuse not to. You've looked around and asked, why now? Why this? Why me? And the silence in response has made you wonder if you're forgotten, if your prayers have gone unnoticed. But that silence, that holy silence, is often the soil where deep trust is born. Because when the answers don't come and the way isn't clear, your soul has only one place to turn. That sacred place where your heart leans not on what it knows, but on who it knows. That's where trust begins to rise. The world will tell you to wait for confirmation, to hold off until everything is mapped out. But heaven whispers a different invitation. Walk by faith. Step when you're unsure. Obey when you don't feel ready. Praise when you still feel pain. Because trust isn't a passive feeling. It's an active posture. It's leaning forward into the promise, even when the promise hasn't fully revealed itself. It's placing your foot in the water before it parts. It's worshiping in the prison cell before the doors opened. And those who know the voice of God, those who have seen His faithfulness in the dark, they understand that trust is not built in the mountaintop moments, but in the valleys. It is in the stillness, in the waiting, in the uncertainty, that God draws near to shape your inner life, not with answers, but with presence. He is not the God of immediate explanations, but of eternal faithfulness. And when he delays, it is not to discourage you, it is to deepen you. He's preparing something greater than you imagined. But before he unfolds his plan, he must anchor your heart in him. Because if your faith is rooted in the outcome, it will falter. But if your faith is rooted in him, nothing can shake it. You're not meant to know every detail of your journey. That's not a lack of direction. It's a divine setup for deeper dependency, for intimacy, for faith. And he will meet you there, not with thunder, not always with visible signs, but with quiet assurance, with that still, small voice that reminds you, you are not alone and you never were. Yet, there's something beautiful that happens when a heart chooses to trust before it sees. It becomes lighter, more tender, more available for the whispers of the Spirit. The striving ceases. The need to prove or control dissolves, and the soul begins to rest, not because the answers have arrived, but because peace has. Peace that surpasses understanding. Peace that guards your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. And that peace, beloved, is the fruit of trust. Trust is what holds your hands open when everything in you wants to clench your fists. Trust says, even if this doesn't look the way I hoped, I know God is still good. It's a quiet kind of courage, not loud, not showy, but strong. It's the decision to let your heart stay soft, to stay present, to stay surrendered, even when you're tired, even when you're afraid, because you know that he is near to the brokenhearted, that he lifts those who are bowed down, that he catches every tear and holds every unanswered prayer close to his heart. Pray from the quiet corners of your soul, Lord. I come to you without all the answers. I come trembling, uncertain, and sometimes afraid. But I choose, even in the darkness, to trust you. I choose to lay down my need to know, my need to fix, my need to understand. I lift my eyes to you, my helper, my redeemer, my rock. Teach me to rest in your presence, not just in your promises. Help me believe again. Not because I see the way, but because I know the one who is the way. Take my weary heart and anchor it in your faithfulness. I surrender my timing, my plans, my questions. Let trust grow where fear once lived. Let peace reign where chaos has tried to settle. I believe, Lord. Strengthen my faith. That prayer isn't a request for circumstances to change. It's a declaration that your heart will. Because trust transforms the way you wait. It reshapes the silence. It renews your inner world. And while the world seeks to build its confidence on sight, you are being called to something higher, something deeper, to a trust that doesn't shake when storms come, to a trust that clings when nothing makes sense, yet to a trust that worships not because it has the answers, but because it knows the answer. We spend our days grasping, clenching, managing outcomes like they're ours to command. We write lists, build plans, structure safety nets. We make decisions with precision, thinking if we just get it all right, we can outsmart disappointment. And somewhere deep in the midst of it all, we convince ourselves that the more we control, the more peace we'll find. But that control is fragile. It's a shell, and when life hits hard, when things unravel, that shell shatters. Because control is only ever an illusion. It never had the power to keep us safe. It only ever made us feel like we were in charge. We don't like the feeling of vulnerability. We'd rather hold tightly to the steering wheel of life, thinking if we steer hard enough, we can avoid every pothole, every unexpected turn. But in that need to control, anxiety begins to grow. It creeps in through the cracks of uncertainty, whispering lies about what could go wrong. And soon, peace becomes dependent on how perfectly we manage each moment. Our rest becomes fragile, easily disturbed by one delay, one bad report, one broken expectation. This is the burden of false control. It promises comfort, but delivers torment. There is a place in the soul that begins to rot when it's ruled by the need to manipulate, to predict, to demand certainty. Because that place was created not for domination, but for surrender. The soul was not designed to orchestrate the universe. It was designed to be held within it by the one who rules with righteousness and mercy, yet. And every time you try to step into the role of controller, you step out of the covering of peace. You place yourself in a position never meant for you. And that misalignment manifests as inner unrest. But there is a remedy. There is a greater invitation to release, to stop grasping and to start trusting, to trade your illusion of control for the truth of his sovereignty. And though it may feel like weakness, it is the beginning of strength, because it takes more courage to let go than to hold on. It takes more faith to say, I trust you, even when I don't understand, than it does to micromanage every detail in fear. And this is where peace begins to bloom, not in the presence of answers, but in the presence of God. The peace you've been searching for doesn't lie at the end of your perfectly executed plan. It lives in the heart that says, even if everything falls apart, I know who holds me together. That's the power of divine trust. It disarms fear. It dissolves the tension. It dethrones the idol of control. And it places the heart back in its rightful position, under the gentle hand of the Father. A Father who is not absent. A Father who is not cold or indifferent, but a Father who sees what you cannot, who knows what you do not, who loves in ways you have yet to understand. And when you reach that place of release, when your hands are open and your heart is yielded, something sacred begins to shift. The voice of fear grows quiet. The pressure lifts, and you are no longer led by what you see, but by who you know. You no longer live to preserve your plan. You live to participate in his. And his plans are good, not always easy, but always redemptive, always shaped with eternity in mind. Pray with me now from the deepest part of you. O Lord, I have tried to rule over what was never mine. I have held tightly to things I was meant to place in your hands. My fear has masqueraded as responsibility, and I am tired. I confess my obsession with outcomes. I release my grip, Lord, not because I have no choice, but because I trust that your will is better than mine. Take every fear that has grown from my attempt to control. Replace it with the peace that comes from trusting in your unfailing love. I lay down every outcome, every timeline, every need to understand. Wash me clean of anxiety and fill me with the stillness of your spirit. That prayer is the sound of the chains loosening, the beginning of rest returning. For when control is surrendered, worship begins. Worship that doesn't wait for everything to go according to plan, but worship that stands in awe of the one who holds the plan in his hands. You weren't created to carry the burden of keeping life perfect. You were created to follow the one who is perfect. And in him, there is safety that control could never give you. In him, there is peace that striving could never produce. You may still face uncertainty. The path ahead may still hold challenges. But you will no longer face them as one trying to control the storm. You will face them as one held in the arms of peace himself. The illusion of control cannot stand in the presence of true surrender. And surrender is not losing. It is winning the battle that has been raging in your soul, the battle between fear and faith. And when faith rises, peace returns. Not because the road has changed, but because you have. There is something that happens deep in the soul when the presence of God draws near. Something sacred. Something unexplainable to those who haven't tasted it. It silences the noise, not just around you, but inside of you. The racing thoughts begin to slow. The heavy weight that pressed down on your chest begins to lift. And for a moment, you remember what it feels like to be whole. Not because your circumstances changed, not because all the questions were answered, but because he came close. And isn't that what you've been craving all along? Not another solution, not another plan to keep the chaos in order, but the stillness that only comes when you know he's here. You've tried to create your own peace through your structure, your striving, your self-control. But none of it lasted, did it? It worked for a moment. It gave a brief sense of stability. But then the storm came again, and your carefully built peace cracked under pressure. Because real peace, the kind that lasts, the kind that heals, doesn't come from what you build. It comes from the one who is peace. He doesn't offer peace like the world does. The world's peace is shallow. It's based on the absence of trouble. The success of your plan, the fulfillment of your expectations. But his peace isn't afraid of the storm. His peace walks right into it. And when his presence fills the space, even the storm loses its power. The winds may still blow, but they can no longer shake you. Because your anchor is no longer in what's around you. It's in who is with you. You've been walking through life thinking peace was a destination. Something you could finally achieve when you got everything under control. But peace isn't a place. It's a person. It's the nearness of the Holy Spirit. It's the assurance that no matter what changes, he doesn't. And he's not just beside you. He's within you. Guiding, comforting, healing places no one else can even reach. That's why your plans could never bring you peace. Because peace isn't something you create. It's something you receive. It's a gift, a divine exchange. And that's why his presence is so powerful. Because when he enters, fear must go. Not because it was forced out, but because it no longer has a place. Light always dispels darkness, and his presence is pure light. You may still feel the weight of the unknown, but the unknown no longer owns you. You may still be walking through the valley, but now you're not walking alone. You're not hoping for peace. You're carrying it inside of you. That's the miracle of living in communion with him. The world may remain chaotic, but your spirit becomes quiet. Not empty, but full of something stronger. Stronger than fear. Stronger than the lies that told you had to fix everything yourself. You don't. He never asked you to. He asked you to come. to abide, to dwell under the shadow of his wings. And when you do, you'll find a stillness that has nothing to do with your surroundings and everything to do with his presence. This peace isn't weak. It's not passive. It's not avoidance. It's the fruit of confidence, the deep, unwavering confidence that God is who he says he is, and he will do what he says he will do. That confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It rests. It breathes. It holds space for miracles because it knows the miracle worker. And when that peace takes root in you, you begin to walk differently. You speak differently. You stop reacting out of panic and start responding out of grace. Pray from your soul now, with open hands, Lord. I have chased peace in all the wrong places. I've looked for it in achievement, in control, in security that never truly satisfied. But now I see, real peace comes from you, from your presence alone. So I open my heart to you. Come, Holy Spirit, dwell in me. Let your peace flood every corner of my being. Wash away the noise, the fear, the torment. Silence every lie that told me I had to earn peace. Teach me to rest, not in what I can do, but in what you have already done. Fill me with your presence until peace becomes my portion, until the storm loses its voice and only yours remains. That is the kind of peace that cannot be stolen, not by circumstances, not by people, not by time, because it's not rooted in the temporal. It's anchored in the eternal. It's not based on how well life behaves. It's based on the unchanging character of a faithful God. You'll still have moments of trembling. You'll still have days when you feel overwhelmed. But those moments no longer define you, because something deeper now holds you steady. The presence of the Prince of Peace. The one who calms not just the wind and waves, but the soul. And when your soul is anchored in him, no storm can shake what's unshakable. ChatGPT said, "You were never asked to be perfect. You were never created to be the one who holds it all together. From the beginning, you were made to walk in communion, to live in surrender, to depend, not as weakness, but as worship." But somewhere along the way, the world convinced you that letting go meant losing, that surrender was defeat, that resting in God's hands was too fragile for the storms you face. So you held tighter. You fought harder. You buried your exhaustion beneath a polished image of control. And every time your knees trembled, you pretended they didn't. Because in your mind, strong people don't fall apart. They manage. They endure. They survive. But what if true strength is not in the gripping, but in the releasing? What if holiness is not found in perfection, but in dependence? What if your greatest act of worship is not found in how well you perform, but in how completely you yield? The world sees letting go as failure. Heaven sees it as faith, because it takes far more courage to trust God than it does to trust yourself yet. And it takes a deeper strength to kneel in surrender than to stand in stubborn self-reliance. You have been trying to carry things that were never yours to carry. Wounds that only he can heal. Questions that only he can answer. Burdens that only his shoulders are wide enough to bear. And that ache in your chest, that quiet, constant ache, it's the sound of your soul crying out for relief, for rest, for release. And deep down, you know you weren't made for this kind of striving. You were made for presence. You were made for intimacy. You were made for the safety that comes not from having all the answers, but from knowing who holds them. Letting go is not a one-time act. It's a way of living. It's waking up each morning and saying, I don't know how this day will unfold, but I trust the one who already sees it. It's closing your eyes at night and laying down every anxious thought into the hands of a God who never sleeps. It's lifting your hands in the middle of the unknown and choosing to say, even here, you are good. And when you live like that, when surrender becomes your posture, something shifts, the pressure lifts, the fear loses its grip yet. Because you are no longer depending on your own ability to control what was never in your hands to begin with. You begin to discover that surrender is not the absence of pain, but the presence of peace. It is not passive. It is powerful. It is not giving up. It is giving over. And that holy exchange transforms you from weary to restful, from anxious to anchored, from fearful to faithful. It doesn't mean the circumstances change, but it means you do. And that is where true freedom begins. Not when your life is perfect, but when your soul is no longer trying to be God. The deepest kind of worship flows from the places where we've chosen to trust Him more than we trust ourselves, where we've laid down our timelines, our blueprints, our expectations, and whispered, have your way. It's in those moments of quiet surrender that the Spirit begins to move most powerfully, not with fanfare, not with fireworks, but with holy fire, the kind that purifies, the kind that strengthens, the kind that fills every broken place with divine presence. So let the tears fall if they need to. Let the walls come down. Let the carefully built image of strength collapse at His feet. He does not despise your weakness. He draws near to it. And He is not waiting for your perfection. He is longing for your surrender. There is more peace in one moment of yielded worship than in 1,000 days of trying to fix yourself. Pray with me now. In the quiet depths of your heart, Lord, I confess that I've tried to carry what was never mine. I've tried to be strong when all you wanted was my surrender. I've resisted letting go because I thought it meant losing, but now I see it means finding you. So I lay everything down at your feet. My fears, my striving, my pride, my pain. I release every outcome, every burden, every unmet desire. I choose to trust that what you have is better than what I can build. I give you my hands, my plans, my heart. Fill me with your peace. Wrap me in your love. Teach me to live from a place of trust, yet not tension. Let my surrender be worship that rises to your throne. In that prayer, something eternal happens. The Spirit rushes in, not like a storm, but like a gentle breeze, brushing over the weary places, breathing life into dry bones. And you may not see it immediately, but you will feel it. The unexplainable peace, the sacred stillness, the calm that makes no sense except that God is near. And when you rise from that place of surrender, you won't rise the same. You'll rise lighter, softer, braver, not because the road ahead has changed, but because you have stopped trying to walk it alone. Letting go isn't weakness. It is worship. It is the most holy kind of strength, the kind that heaven honors, the kind that hell fears, the kind that transforms a life, not by removing the storm, but by inviting the storm walker into the boat. And when he is in the boat, even the waves must obey.